Boxing King Media in association with Boxro out in Sheffield with Dominic Ingle. I see you just finished off with a private client. Is that something you do very often? I was expecting boxers, not private clients.
Oh, I mean, look, over the years with boxing, with fighters, you're always training them, not only to get fit and be able to box, but taking weight off them. And I've kind of come a bit of an expert at doing that. So I've had a lot of people on social media contacting me, and I've taken a few on board, and we've had some great results. And people have seen it on my social media. People losing. I've had a couple of clients losing 2.5 stone in space of 45, 50 days. So yeah, I've just finished a couple off in the gym, a bit of fitness stuff. Kids who want to do some boxing, so it's all taking off really.
Interesting. So just out of curiosity, so if somebody wants to get trained by you, have some sort of one-to-one training, a diet plan, etc., how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, just drop me a DM on my social media and we can have a chat.
That's on your IG, yep.
Spot on. IG, Instagram, yeah.
Sound. Just before we crack on, anyone that's watching this, please do hit the subscribe button, because we get a lot of people watching these interviews with you, Dom, but a lot of them, 90% of them, don't hit subscribe.
Why not? They should be hitting subscribe all the time, get the latest updates.
That's it. A little plug for us. So let's get cracking. So a big fight week for you as well. But the first thing I want to speak to you about is this whole Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua debate. Obviously, the contracts have been sent now from Fury's team to Matchroom. But there's a big debate going on in the background. A lot of experts are saying AJ shouldn't fight Fury next. He needs to sort his mental health out, etc., etc. But the counter complaints are, well, old school did it back to back, fighting the best. What's your take on it?
I think sometimes, where Anthony Joshua is, he's done everything, he's made the money. And, realistically, the way to get over it is just get back in the ring. He had time out against his first loss against Usyk and reassessed everything. He still got beat. So, sometimes you've just got to throw yourself into the mix. And, maybe it's the best time to get Tyson, because Tyson's obviously been out for a while. He's been living it up, so to speak. I mean, he's a very difficult fighter. And he kind of beats you verbally first. But, why not? It's he might be underestimating Anthony Joshua after his last loss. So, if I were Anthony Joshua, forget getting yourself straight. Just get yourself in the mix now, because he's been beat twice on the trot. And sometimes you've got to throw yourself in. There's no point building him back up or protecting him or whatever. Just put him in the fight.
It's an interesting viewpoint, that, because a lot of people are talking about the mental side of boxing, obviously his outbursts after the fight, but obviously you've been around fighters for a long time. Do you think that's going to play a factor, whether his mental health should be taken into consideration, or do you think that just happened at that moment?
With boxing, a fighter's mental health is at its peak when they've just won a fight, and they can win 10 fights in a row and be in the best place, and then get beat, and then the mental health and everything else is all over the place until they win again. And we can go back to Kell Brook, the dark places he's been over the years, getting stabbed, getting sockets broken, and everything else. And all I can say is, it's just something realistically what the fighter's kind of got to get over himself. Nobody can get it over for him. It don't matter whether you've got these psychologists or these, mental health coaches. Kell Brook kind of did it on himself. He just came into the gym, that was his therapy, and he got confidence off, doing his sparring, doing his training, doing everything right. And that's what AJ's got to do. Nobody can help you get over that hump on yourself, and you either get over it or you don't. And you go into them fights. Look at how he came back from Crawford for Khan. Look at the comebacks he's had since Golovkin and Errol Spence. So his career could have been finished a long time ago, back in 2016 with the first eye socket. That was enough to finish anybody off. It finished off Anthony Ogogo. So, what my advice would be, it's a bit of a short turnaround time for AJ to get back in the ring before Christmas. But if the fight can be made, well, maybe Tyson's bluffing. Maybe he knows that Anthony's not going to be mentally right, and he's eventually going to back out, and then he can have another go at him. I don't know, but if it can be made, why not? Because, like you said, back in the day, fighters just fought back to back, everybody and everybody. What's different now? It's just that we've become a bit softer.
Why is that? What do you think was a turning point from fighters? Like we were talking about it off camera earlier. Sugar Ray Robinson went on tour fighting people like every week with broken bones, but now fighters are wanting 3-4 months, or if they lose a fight, they're wanting a comeback fight. What happened?
Well, I think when you go back over history, you had to fight on a regular basis. You got a limited period of time, you got a limited career, and you had to get as many fights in as you could. But you weren't getting fantastic life-changing money. You were getting good money, but nowhere the figures what you're getting today. Where look at Golovkin and Canelo at the weekend. They got enough money to retire 3 times over. So, fighters back in the day didn't get that. They got good money and they spent it quickly. But the only way to accumulate the wealth then was to be fighting on a regular basis. Now you can just fight once or twice a year if you're top flight, even once a year, and you've got enough, to live on for the rest of your life. I think that's the difference. The incentive's totally different these days. There were no sponsorship back in the day. You had to go around, sell the arenas out. There's no TV. So you made the money on the gate, and the more often you fought, the more often you're in the ring beating the guys, the more of an attraction you were. People turned out to see you.
And just on that point, obviously the other debate is people are talking about his training situation. Someone's saying he should go across to America and just train with Robert. What do you think he should do? Because Robert did an interview at the weekend, and I think his comments were that he feels he shouldn't fight Fury next.
Well, who should he fight? What if he's going to beat a lesser fighter? What lesser fighters can he beat? And who's let's say you've got Joyce, you've got Parker, you've got all these other heavyweights, the top flight heavyweights. Realistically, he could get beat against any of them in the state that he's supposed to be in. So is anybody going to turn out for somebody who's going to beat? That's the difference. So realistically, he should take the biggest fight he can for the biggest money, because that's the level he's at. If he struggles against a lesser known or a smaller, a less known opponent, then his selling point's gone. So realistically, where he's at, he's got himself up to that peak. Just throw yourself into the big fights.
That's probably a valid point there, because obviously if he fought another heavyweight, as a comeback fight, obviously it's heavyweight boxing. If it backfires, Fury fight's gone, isn't it?
Exactly, and it's like if you're Premiership and you play a team 2 or 3 leagues lower, maybe you're going to go down to their level as well. You could get beat, obviously, and then is it going to prepare you for the bigger fights? Not necessarily. He doesn't need warm-up fights. He doesn't need comeback fights. He just needs to chuck himself in at the top level, because that's where he's at. He's elite, isn't he, so to speak? He's been world champion. He's had the belts. So realistically, he's got to show his mental strength just by getting in the ring.
Sound. And moving on, you mentioned Joyce there, the two Joes, Joyce, Joseph Parker fighting this Saturday. What's your take on the fight? I think people can't really split them.
It's a tough fight. Parker's had a lot of experience. He's been in with better guys, I would say, than Joyce. But the mistake a lot of fighters make with Joyce is he's there to be hit, and he has been hit. But so far, he's been hit by the biggest punches. He's been hit by the big names in the division, and he stood up. Dubois, young at the time, could punch, known as a puncher, and the shots kind of bounced off him. Whether that resistance, lets him down in this fight, I don't know, but it looks like he's easy to hit. But the thing is, he's like a truck. That's why they call him the truck. But he can punch, and he's older than Parker. That's the thing. Parker to me seems, an oldish guy, seems to be around forever. But I just think with Joyce, it's a fight he's got to win. He's unbeaten, and that counts for a lot, because when you're unbeaten, you take that into the ring with you. Parker's been through the defeats, and I'm not saying it's ever acceptable, but you kind of like learn to live with it. When people are saying to you, you got beat and you should pack up, and he's had to go through those dark times, and it's not as bad probably when you get beat. It's different when you're a prospect. Same with Nazim Hamid, when he got beat by Barrera, he was ruined after that, because a lot of it, he lived on the hype, Naz. That he was invincible. He kind of believed his own hype, and same with Joyce. He has got it in his mind that he's undentable and unbreakable, and he can walk through anything, and that counts for a lot when shots are bouncing off your chin. And I kind of get the impression that Parker's going to get tired of hitting him and having no effect, and Joyce is going to keep coming back with big shots and zapping him. So I think it's going to be a tough fight for both fighters, but I just see Joyce winning this one.
How do you think it plays out? Because some people, who obviously, it tends to be the same people who always doubt Joyce, are basically saying that Parker's going to stop him or catch him at some point. How do you think the ending will go?
I think Parker's going to try and, the way to beat Joyce is to be smart and box him and be clever. But I just think he's going to get drawn in, Parker. You know what I mean? He'd probably catch Joyce with a couple of shots and get confident and walk in and then walk onto something. But look, it could be a late stoppage by Joyce late on. He's very good to the body, and you tend to find with heavyweights they don't really target that a lot, but Joyce is very good at that. He's got them long arms, he's big, and he'll wear Parker down, and I just think that Parker's going to make the mistake of trying to land a big shot, and he's going to get caught trying to do it.
And it's probably worth mentioning as well, Joyce has got himself in a position where he's due a title shot next. but he's willing to fight the best back-to-back, similar to what Dillian White does. Rate him for that?
Yeah, you do rate him, and the other thing is, if you're going to be the champion, you've got to have the mindset you're going to beat everybody and anybody. And if he obviously gets beat by Parker, then obviously he's not cut out to be the top flight. So he's 37. He hasn't got a lot of time to waste. He can't, he's not a spring chicken anymore. He can't hang around. So he's got to take these chances, and he's got to keep the momentum going. That's the main thing about fighters: keep the momentum going.
Definitely. I just want to quickly ask you before I move on to Barry's fight. Kell Brook, you put a story out the other week which did a few numbers on Twitter. He's not coming back, is he?
Listen, you never say never. I mean, he came into the gym. He's been in last week. He's been in this week. He's training. He's doing all right. He's got a few things going off, a couple of public events where he's doing talks and stuff. But he did say to me he's getting the bit between his teeth. And the more he watches the Ben and Eubank saga, he's kind of like laughing. He says, he goes, Dominic, he says, Eubank kind of writing himself out of that fight, because of the weight. Conor Ben, he goes, he's a bigger guy. On paper, he's a better fighter. What's wrong with him? Why is he losing his pen again? So maybe, he's had talks with Ben Shalom or Sky, thinking about the winner of those two. I don't know, but he's been in, twice a day, training. Seems in a good place. Who knows what the outcome's going to be?
Interesting. And just talking on Chris Eubank, you've obviously seen him tucking into desserts and ice creams over the last few weeks. Do you reckon he's swallowing them, or is he just chewing them and spitting them out when the camera's going?
Well, listen, it could be mind games, but it's like, don't rely on what they're putting out. You should really switch the media off where the Eubank's concerned. I mean, Chris was a master of publicity and smart moves and mind games. Look how he had Nigel Benn spinning in that fight, and a lot of people had Nigel Benn down as a big favourite for that fight, and Eubanks kept his calm. He was the kind of always chasing for that fight, and I did kind of get the impression at the time that Ben didn't really want that fight, but Eubank used his ringcraft and his smartness. And he actually let Nigel work against himself. He went flat out, Nigel, ran out of gas, and then Eubank clipped him. And it's the same kind of thing. Leading the opposition into a sense of full security is what the Eubanks are good at. So I wouldn't be surprised that's coming into play with Chris, playing mind games. So, we can only wait and see. Hopefully the fight materialises.
Interesting. Moving on to Barry, a big opportunity for him this weekend. I was looking through Barry's resume: British, European, Commonwealth, an IBF world title and a WBC international title. He's pretty much done it all. Has he still got enough hunger to go out and go up against not a young fighter, but a hungry fighter like Maxi Hughes and win that IBO belt?
Well, you know what, they're about the same age. I think they're the same year of birth and the same month, so there's not much in them. But yeah, looking over his resume, he's done everything from super bantam into featherweight. Maxi's been a bit of a slow burner. He's come good towards the end of his career, and obviously the way that Barry got beat last time is obviously questionable. It's like, well, has he got anything left? And what I'll say is that I think he's made a smart move jumping up 2 weight divisions, because jumping to super feather, 4 pound difference is not a great deal of headroom. And you can just see in the gym he's a stronger fighter. He's better moods. He's not worrying about his weight. He looks strong. He's had some great sparring for this fight. And like I said, Maxi's, himself came up from super feather. He's not a massive fighter, but he's a little smart boxer. He's obviously training with Josh Warrington's dad, and he's got that kind of hit and move style, and he's had some good wins of late. So it's an interesting fight. I think Barry's down as the favourite because of what he's done, but you've got to calculate in the way he got beat last time, and that'll be a big factor in Maxi's camp, thinking that when he got to hit him on the chin. But if you look how Kiko went into the fight against Warrington, he wasn't a pushover, was he? Broke Warrington's jaw, busted him up, he can still punch, and he was still game. So he wasn't like Galahad got a faded fighter with him. And like I say, it's going to be an interesting fight at the weekend, because it's effectively a gatekeeping fight. Whoever wins, that's going to move on, and whoever's not has really kind of lost the plot, so to speak.
Definitely. I wanted to get your opinion on Barry's work ethic. You've said over the years it's no secret that he trains every day, but could that ever at some point backfire against him, the fact that he doesn't seem to ever have a rest? Does he at some point need to just get himself away from the sport?
Not really. I mean, not really, because like I say, some fighters take a lot of time out. and come back. Look at Kell, he's done it over the years. And then you've got Billy, who's been out for ages, and it's a hard slog. Everybody does it differently. And the thing is with Barry, he actually enjoys training. He does switch off. But like I say, in this sport, it's all about being healthy, it's all about being fit. And, there were no excuses for the last fight. He did everything right. It's only really when you get beat like that you realise, maybe it was one fight too much at that weight. And it's happened with lots of fighters in the past. And then they've been rejuvenated when they've moved up and carried on. Sometimes fighters make that move before they get beat. But it's kind of 50-50, you see it a lot in boxing. And like I say, on Saturday night we'll know if that was the factor or really he's just come to the natural end of his career. Personally, I don't think he has. I think he's got a lot more to offer, the way he's been training, the way he's been performing. His just general demeanour compared to his last couple of fights when all you're doing is worrying about making the weight. So, it'll be an interesting fight. It's going to be a good scrap.
And is there any added pressure on him? Obviously, everyone knows he's not the golden boy at Matchroom, and obviously if he loses, potentially he might not get another opportunity, because even the build-up to this fight, he didn't really know up until 4 or 5 weeks ago whether he was going to get the fight, whether it was going to be Linares, Ryan Garcia. That must have some sort of effect on him, knowing that he's not the A side and not the guy that Matchroom want to promote. And do you see what I'm getting at?
I think that's been the thing all through his career anyway. There's obviously fighters, in boxing are always going to be the A side, and they're always going to sell better because of who they are. Like Conor Benn, Eubank, those kind of, obviously Anthony Joshua. It's like, we've had the fighters in the past, like the Junior Witters always been the B side to the Ricky Hattons. The Kell Brooks who've been the B side to the Amir Khans. We're used to that, and I think Barry obviously knows as a fighter that that's the way it's always been. Nobody's going to do him any favours, and you shouldn't expect any favours. You should only rely on yourself, and that's the way it is. And from where he started in boxing, he's done exceptionally well. And I think on Saturday night he's going to be rejuvenated. He's going to win the fight. And he's going to go on from there and maybe hopefully get some bigger fights. You do have slip-ups in boxing. It happens all the time. You look back over the last 20 years, the big upsets in boxing. Look at Manny Pacquiao getting levelled by Marquez and then coming back, and you get it. It happens. And then even Manny Pacquiao going over to Australia getting beat by Jeff Owen, who was nothing sparkling. So it happens in boxing. You sometimes you make those mistakes, and it's how you come back from them, and that's, I think, going to be the case on Saturday.
But the reason I mentioned that is because I just wanted to set up the question properly. Obviously, it's no secret, 2014 when he had the drugs ban. After him, loads of other fighters, big names have been done for similar sort of stuff, being given bans, etc. But when you read on social media the comments, Barry's achievements, and then it seems that the fans haven't forgiven him. Do you think all this kind of plays a part, and why do you think he's kind of reminded about it even now when other fighters haven't?
You know what, I've no idea, and it's not something I really think about. The only thing I'll say about boxing is it's never been any different. Drug testing's a lot tighter, there's more of it, which is great, and there's a lot more supplements out there, there's a lot more grey areas, a lot more pollutants in supplements. It's a fact. The testing's far greater. At one time you'd only ever get tested on fight night, so effectively back in the day there was no random testing in gyms. You could be doing all sorts and give yourself time to clear it all, and then you're all right on the night. It doesn't happen like that anymore. So there's all those grey areas, and it's not something I lose sleep over. It was a thing what happened. He got past it and moved on and carried on, and he's drug tested on a regular basis after fights, and nothing's ever come up since. He's in fantastic shape. He's even won a world title. They blood test you, they urine test you, they're knocking on your door all the time, and that just shows really that he's doing everything right. Things happen in boxing. It's it happened with Dillian White, it happened with Tyson Fury, it's happened with them all, and it's easy to point the finger. It's just not black and white. It's not black and white. Even with Canelo, it's not black and white. It's a very, very grey area. But the thing is, it's got to be policed the best way it can.
Definitely. Thank you for answering that. Like I said, the point I wanted to make was that I just feel like he seems to get reminded about it a lot when a lot of other fighters haven't. And also, obviously, he's kind of the last fighter in the gym that's from your dad's era. Your dad obviously raved about Barry. Before we wrap up, is there anything you could share, a story or something that, from what your dad might have said about Barry when he started off in the gym? You've told us good stories before about Johnny.
I think, I don't know if I've ever told you this one, but I remember the day that Barry came into the gym, and I came in one morning. It was about 9 o'clock and Barry was about 13. So I came in and there's a kid doing his footwork. I mean, I says, come on, I want to have a word with you. So we went outside. And what's up? He went, this fella here. I went, yeah. He goes, an Arab. I went, oh, yeah. He went, I goes, who is he? He goes, Naz has sent him down, the Naz fella. And this is, a few years after Naz had left the gym. I says, and what? He goes, I think he's a spy. So I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, he says he's met Naz at the mosque. He says, I've said to Naz, I want to be a boxer. And he says, well, go down and see Brendan Ingle in this gym. He says, he'll make you into a world champion like he did me. I says, right. I says, so you think Naz has sent him down as a spy? He went, yeah. I said, well, if he were spying, I says, why would he have told you that Naz had sent him down in the first place? He went, you know what, I never thought about that. I says, well, I guess we'll see. But he had him doing his footwork at 9 o'clock. And then I came in at 12 o'clock. He was still doing his footwork. And then I came in at 3 o'clock. He was still doing his footwork. So I said to Brendan, my dad, I said, you know what's happening with him? He went, well, he goes, I'm going to see how long he sticks doing this footwork for. He goes, maybe he's just going to get cheese off and clear off. He goes, then we'll see if he's got the motivation for it. And this is no word of a lie. He did his footwork from 9 o'clock in the morning till 3 in the afternoon. And Barry said later years, your dad came back. He says he brought me a sandwich. It was a white bread cake with salad on because I was a Muslim. He says I didn't, there's nothing in the shop I could eat. He says, so I had that. He says, what am I doing now, Brendan? He says, some more footwork. He says, I did my footwork till 3. He says, then all the kids came in from school. He said, right, put your gear on, get in the ring. Because he lent me some sparring gear. I got in and sparred for 2 hours. He says, so I've been there from 9 till 5. He says, he made me do that all week. And he says, I kind of got the impression at the time he was just trying to, cheese me off so I didn't turn up. He says, but the things with Barry kept coming and kept coming and kept coming. And that's pretty much the way Barry's been ever since, So that was the vetting period for Kid Galahad, and he's always been the same. So it's worked out good, and, a kid who came in, never boxed in his life, a bit of a football player more than anything, just wanted to be a boxer, and an off-chance meeting with Naseem Hamed, switched things around for him, and now at 32 years old, he's in a great place financially. He's kept out of trouble all these years with the police, where a lot of his friends from the areas have been sent down. They've ended up in prison. So he's turned himself around. He's in a great place. So that's an achievement in itself.
Top man, good story that. Anything else you want to add, Dom, before I let you go?
No, like I say, we're all on Saturday. It's a good good weekend of boxing, and that's out of the way. And then we can look forward to hopefully the Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua fight, and let's see what happens.
Definitely, and like we said at the start, if you want some private one-to-one training with Dom or diet plans, contact him on his Instagram and make sure you subscribe. Thank you.